this is what Spain at night looks like normally, right? And then they had their blackout. Now, I won't labour the point on this, but they had a blackout. And this is what happened. So this is the data. The yellow line you see there is demand, and supply and demand need to match. You might notice when they had the blackout, which is this point here, they had more power than they needed. So it was not a shortfall of power. Solar is the orange. What happened was they had a lot of power coming in where the frequency changed.
You're watching Capital Cause, and my name is Danny. Today's guest is geologist and longtime guest on the show, Simon Michaux. Simon, thank you so much for coming on the show, my friend.
Hello, Danny. It is so nice to see you again.
Yeah, likewise. Simon, we have a loaded podcast for our audience today. We're going to talk about your Hawaii report. We're going to talk about what that entails, how you envision future resource allocation and management on a civilizational level, and how we can kind of find our way out of some of the parameters that have been been put upon us. Have we hit peak oil? What does that mean? Is there a way out of peak oil, given the fact that so much of what we use, we are swimming in an ocean of energy? Is there a way to transition to something else? We'll talk about that. And I also know you have some very interesting and novel work that I haven't heard anyone else talk about regarding China and how they're effectively waging war on the West without appearing to do so. We're going to dig into that. I'll kick it off with you. You can take it whichever way you want. You can tackle whichever topic you want first. But okay, what do you think should be looked at front and center right now for the audience?
So, right. Hello, everyone. That's an interesting question. Like, what's the most pertinent question to look at? And what I found is, while there are many challenges on the books that we've got to be looking at, what is perhaps most pertinent for us to look at is situation awareness. What's our true situation? Because there's also a lot of illusion out there. Like, we're convinced to look at we're convinced to waste our time chasing things that don't necessarily matter. And the true things that do matter, we are just starting to come to grips with. We are both the problem and the solution. If we get out of our own way, we can, we've got something to work with here. There are solutions on the ground. What we don't have is time. And so, because we don't have time, it's going to be a big old mess. So what I suggest we do, if I may present, let me say share screen. How do I do that? So I'm just putting this in presentation mode. So the idea is to show you and talk over this, and I'm just changing the display setting to talk over this, and I'm not going to show you the whole thing. Can you see that?
Yep.
Is it sharing? Okay. All right. So I won't show you the whole thing, but this, I can send you these slides, and you can go through them as you like. What I'm showing here is a summary of the Hawaii report that's just been published, and I won't go through the whole thing to save time, but what I'm essentially doing here is looking at a system. Hawaii is an island chain in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, which means it can be quantified. And I wanted to map out a whole series of things and test it away from the Nordic frontier. Like I was doing this for countries like Finland and Sweden and Iceland, and I wanted to try it in a different country with different problems. I got hold of some people who are Hawaiians and have got all the good data and everything, and so it's been led by Hawaiians. And I've managed to look at things like the green transition and look at it, but also other scenarios as well. So here's the report, and that's the link down there. It's got one report and 2 volumes of appendices with it, so it's a rather long document. When we print it, it's going to be in 3 volumes, but it's all there. So where it's okay, I won't go through all that. So the paradigm of the report is to map out the state of Hawaii for the calendar year of 2019. Now, I picked 2019 because it was the last year before COVID, the COVID pandemic, supply disruptions. After that, there's all these data artifacts that made everything very
Hey, Simon,
strange.
are you still on the title slide, or have you moved on to a separate
I've
slide?
moved on. I've moved
Oh.
on. You mean it's not? This isn't. It's on slide 5. It's not working.
No, it's still on slide 1.
Okay, right. So
okay, now it's moving.
Okay, so it's not doing
Now you're on
presentation.
slide 5.
Yeah, it's not doing presentation mode. Never mind. We can run like this. All right. So the idea was to fully electrify the whole system, phase out fossil fuels completely, but maintain the same economic capability. All fossil fuel systems are removed. Now, the ideal is to look at all paradigms. All problems and challenges are mapped out and with data placed on the table along with all possible solutions, conventional and unconventional. Around that table, all stakeholders are present and a constructive dialogue commences. So instead of saying this path will work and that path will work, the thing is to test all of it and see how we go. So the reason Hawaii was such a nice case study, most energy generation is petroleum based, the burning of oil, even the generation of electricity, which was very interesting. They're also highly dependent on the tourist industry. So they're very, very vulnerable to any disruption to the oil system. In terms of transport, I mapped out how many vehicles, where they are and what they did, including maritime and aviation. So, all right, and so collect all the information, how many vehicles, what class, what distance they travel, and now if they're all non-fossil fuel systems, what would that look like? This is the scenarios. So I'm hoping you can read that. Can you read that?
I can from where I'm sitting because the TV's a little far away from my desk.
Okay.
But it's
On
a little
screen,
small. It's a little small nonetheless. So if you can magnify it a bit.
Let's see. So what about now? Can you see it now?
No, it's still the same. So if you move that slider down at the bottom right to the right hand side, so you at the bottom right of the screen. Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
Much better.
All right. So yeah, okay. The software is not letting it share. Okay. So the idea is this. We're going to go through a series of scenarios. Status quo, no change. What happens? Then we've got things like everything's electrified. Everything's a hydrogen economy. Everything is biofuels and biomass, or everything is ammonia fueled ICE. So what's happening there is there are people who are quite aggressive in putting forward their solution, and they don't want to hear anything else. And so the idea is, even though this is impractical, there's a lot of people who passionately believe in these scenarios. So put data on the table for them. It also performs a boundary condition. And so you can make a mix of scenarios HA to HD in anything you want. And you can then actually sort of from those combinations make out any energy mix you want. Because in each one of those scenarios, I've done what would it look like if it was exclusively solar or exclusively wind or exclusively nuclear? What would be involved with that? So now they've got the data. So scenario HE is the green transition as promoted by the European Commission. But the first one, hybrid 1, is if we were to go with what the law was in Hawaii. Now, in Hawaii, for example, they won't allow nuclear power and they won't allow geothermal to be expanded beyond what it is already. Hybrid 2 is what would happen if we changed the legislation and the regulations that allowed things like a nuclear power plant to be installed. And so you could compare what was the impact of installing a single nuclear power plant. Scenario HF was based around the idea of the limits to growth report, where we would look at a contraction of the Hawaiian society, and we looked at a 40% contraction. I wanted to go a little stronger, but I was talked into a 40% cut it will make the point. But we will use green transition technology as we work on it. Scenario HG was the circular economy was applied in full, 100% recycling. How many recycling plants are we talking about? And it turns out it's not that many compared to the infrastructure you'd need for everything else. Scenario HH, all food is produced with organic, regenerative agriculture and permaculture principles, no petrochemicals. And so I mapped out what's involved with that. Like, could the population of Hawaii actually do that? And the answer is yes. Then that brings us to the purple. Come back. And then it brings to scenario HI, which is the purple transition. And so that is, if we look at these are all unorthodox ideas. Every conventional scenario that I looked at so far had problems. Like there was some sort of bottleneck in thinking that didn't allow things to happen. And so all right. So I looked at liquid fuel fission, which is generation 4 molten salt reactors. If Hawaii was to apply those to the point of 80% of the energy mix, how many molten salt reactors are we talking about? The answer is not many. And so that could revolutionize everything. And we looked at a few other things, and like ammonia-fueled ICE, or burning iron powder as a metal fuel, and so on.
And so what did you do with these scenarios? Like, did you simulate what would be the logical conclusion if they went down those individual routes? How did you tackle this?
So what I did was, instead of doing a time simulation, what I did was took the existing footprint of the Hawaiian society, and says, if you were to go to any of these scenarios, this is the infrastructure you would need, the amount of land you would need, and the amount of things that you'd need to build to maintain the capability that you enjoy right now. And so once that's sort of up and running, and I would look at, this is what you would need to commission the first generation. And from that, you could then imply a time series if you wanted to do that way. So what that means is this could be it could be a Rosetta Stone for sustainability for the Hawaiian economy. That's what it was designed to be. So we can go in any direction in a data-supported fashion to design what the future plan could be, and in terms of what you would need to assemble to make that plan happen. Listen, we're going to do it now. How many power plants do we need to build? How many solar panels do we need to put on the ground? What sort of power buff storage do we need? If we were to go nuclear, do we need one nuclear plant? Do we need 10? How big? How long? And so on.
Do you anticipate taking this plan on the ground in Hawaii at some point? I mean, I know some of these, like thorium, liquid fuel fusion, like with thorium, might be a little hard to pull off in Hawaii, given like you said before we hit record, so many of the people there are millionaires and billionaires, and they pretty much control what comes in and out of the state. But do you ever anticipate going down there and
yes,
working with the local government?
So we're going to launch the report, and when we do, my wife and I are going to fly out there, and we're going to run a series of workshops and meetings where we're going to actually have a discussion. And the whole purpose of this was to look at all systems, all the conventional paths. And so we don't start with thorium, we end with thorium. So we look at all the things they think they're going to do. Because at the moment they're dependent on oil, and everything is, we think we're going to do X, we believe we're going to do Y, but they haven't actually done the maths, they haven't done the homework. And so the idea is that if you were to actually do this, this is what you're faced with. That's the existing electrical demand. We've got gasoline and diesel transport, domestic maritime, international aviation. How do we do that? And the idea is to lead a discussion. But in the end, it's Hawaiians who will decide what happens in Hawaii. And so the idea is to hand them the launch codes. And then so what do they do with it? And so when you sort of say, well, thorium's an idea, and then they'll come back and say, oh, no, that's a little wacky for us. And I said, well, if you don't work out something, your fate is to freeze to death in the dark. So, all right, all the conventional stuff won't work. So now you've got to turn to the unconventional, or what? And we'll leave it with them. And if they can't face the idea of doing the unconventional, well, then this becomes a case study and maybe someone else will look at it. And it turns out there are multiple groups around the world getting thorium up and running. So if the Hawaiians believe that they want to stick with a more conservative approach, okay, but their options are now very limited in terms of what can they do.
Understood.
So this is their problem, as in this is if they take no action. Conventional peak oil production, this is crude oil, had a localized peak in November 2018, and we're just sort of nudging up against that now. But we're on a plateau. We're not increasing, and everything rides on the American tight oil sector. And the problem we have is that there's one school of thought that that tight oil sector will now plateau and produce oil for years. Meanwhile, the rest of the world is still declining. We're also innovating gasoline to be produced from different sources like biofuels and natural gas liquids, and so there's a lot of moving parts there. There's another school of thought that says that the Permian Basin may be close, or even already has peaked production, and either way, it's around now. If it's now, if either there's now or in like 5-6 years' time, it's the same. It's the same basic problem, because the amount of time and effort it takes to replace these systems is huge.
You're looking for great deals on gold and silver coins and bars from a company that you can trust, then you've got to check out the good folks over at Pembex. This year, I've really gotten to know these guys, and all I can say is you're not going to deal with a better group of people. They're a family-owned gold and silver online bullion company offering the essentials and more at industry-leading prices while always providing first-class top-tier service. That's PIMBEX.com. And if you're looking to convert some or all of your retirement account into real gold and silver, give Pembex a call. They'll help explain the process and get you started on the right path. Your support at Pembex also helps support the channel. So reach out to Pembex today. You won't be disappointed. And make sure to tell them Danny sent you.
So it's all right. So scenario A, HA boundary condition, all transportation with electric propulsion, powered by lithium-ion battery chemistry. All conventional non-fossil fuel power generation systems were looked at in the exclusive context of electricity generation. But it was found that it was more sensible to have a combination of technologies. And that's not rocket science, but I had to go through the process to show this. And it was not it's not sensible to have all transport as battery-supported electric vehicles. Some should be hydrogen fuel cells. Some should be. We should have a range of technologies matched for fit for purpose. So this is the flow sheet that we went through. So what was the transport that we had, like in terms of gasoline? How much gasoline and diesel was consumed? What was the physical work done in terms of kilowatt hours? What was the engine efficiency associated with each technology? Like gasoline's 21%. Whereas an electric vehicle system, electric propulsion, is 73%. So there's a massive step up there. And then we actually said, well, how much electricity needs to come from the grid? And when you add all this together for this scenario, it was 31.2 terawatt hours for the year in Hawaii. And then we looked at, well, what was the generation of storage and efficiency, and there was transmission stuff. Things like that there was an 8% loss between the generation point and the consumption point. What I also did, the size performance metrics of the proposed grid. And so, all right, so let's say it's all solar. And so we got one of the groups in Hawaii that installs solar panels. They're a consultancy group that actually looks at solar power generation, and they actually got Hawaiian data from the island of Oahu. And so, well, how much electrical power do we need to deliver to the grid per year? And then we work backwards from there. And we looked at that there was like a whole lot of different things we could put in, like solar panels on houses, solar panels on commercial rooftops, solar panels on parking spaces. Are they fixed tilt ground mounts, or are they single axis trackers? So, and each one of them has an efficiency and in production. And so we actually looked at proper data of how much would actually how much would they actually produce if they were mounted in Hawaii in these numbers? And that we got an estimated 18.57 gigawatts of installed DC wattage. And yeah, and so we ended up with an estimated solar power system availability of 19.2%. And the size of the buffer we needed, which I'm about to go through in a moment, was 2.46 terawatt hours. And so let me just, since I can't use animations, just bear with me. All right, so this is what Azimuth Systems did was they looked at all the different kinds of solar power systems that were available in the market at the moment. And in terms of every kilowatt installed, how much power in terms of kilowatt hours they would produce in the months of January, February, right across the year, based on location SAM weather file database in Oahu. So this is actually data in Hawaii. And so they worked out how much, given the installed number of installed things, how much power would actually be delivered. And then that brings us to this table where we're actually sort of across the year, it would produce this amount of power. Okay, so given that, this is what happened. Right, so this is the amount of power. Now this is in Hawaii where the sun shines very well. Thank you very much. And what we found was, well, there's the midway point. For 5-6 months of the year, we're below that line. And so for a couple of months of the year, too much electrical power was brought in. But then,
so wait, does the line signify the power that needs to be generated? Is that the requisite?
That's the average. That's the average that can be sort of delivered consistently all year round. So the red line is power produced, but we need to, on average, present the same amount of power all year. Right. So in summer, too much power is generated, so you can catch and store it. But in winter, there is less power to go around, and in winter we need power. So it's got to come. So the buffer is the area between the dotted line and the red line. And what I came up with was this. So here's the actual. Damn, it's a real pain in the bum having my animations taken off me. It's interesting. I have to look at this. Right, so this is the power produced, and this is the deficit from the average. And this is where we get our 19.2% market availability. And the outcome was this.
So wait, what does the 19.2% represent?
So that of their total capacity, right, the theoretical capacity, it's always producing power, right? But it's producing of a potential theoretical 100% theoretical maximum, is producing 19.2% of capacity. So power is being produced all the time, but on average, how many solar panels do you need to put on the ground to deliver a certain amount of power to the grid? Right. So across the year, there was a shortfall of 2.46 terawatt hours, which was 28.8 days of capacity that would have to be in storage. So a lot of people who criticize my work say I've actually got the amount of storage needed wrong. And so they say, oh, I've badly overestimated this. Well, look at this graph, guys. Right, so this is the amount of power that would actually be delivered from a state-of-the-art solar grid, right? And to maintain that dotted line for January, February, part of March, part of October, November, and December, we need to get power from somewhere else to deliver that dotted line. And you say, oh, collect it in summer. Yes, you've got to collect it, then you've got to store it. Solar panels need a power storage buffer, so do wind. right? And so this is actually a simulation that shows and makes the point we need a buffer. And so conventional thinking believes we only need 5 to 7 hours, right? So 5 to 7 hours to balance the difference between summer and winter. It's ridiculous. That calculation was actually based on something else entirely. It's not that the calculation was wrong, it was for a different purpose entirely. It doesn't even get us through a single night, but that's not what it was for. Anyway, so the reason we were interested in this, if we have to make a storage buffer, where does that storage come from? We need to build infrastructure for that. Now, before we move on, here's the Spanish case study. You talked about it in your last podcast. This is what Spain at night looks like normally, right? And then they had their blackout. Now, I won't labor the point on this, but they had a blackout. And this is what happened. So this is the data. The yellow line you see there is demand, and supply and demand need to match. You might notice when they had the blackout, which is this point here, they had more power than they needed. So it was not a shortfall of power. Solar is the orange. What happened was they had a lot of power coming in where the frequency changed. The actual frequency of the power changed, and the grid can't cope with that, and so it wasn't damaged. Multiple power stations shut down, and that triggered a nationwide power outage, and it all shut down. Now, this puts to rest the idea that all we need to do is have a 3 times build out of wind and solar, and that solves all our problems. We don't need a buffer. And says, well, actually, the grid just cannot cope with variable power. It just can't. It needs an intermediate system. It's an engineering problem to solve. And so there's a massive amount of infrastructure here.
So right, even if you produce more energy than you need vis-a-vis solar, you still run the risk of overwhelming the grid like you did in Spain. So right, that's one of the big risks behind solar.
So so you need to actually have the same supply and demand to match perfectly, but you also need the same frequency to match. And if you see movements up or down, the grid from a technical point of view becomes unstable, and it gets damaged. It's like your computer being hit with a power surge. It's got to shut down for its own longevity. There is a new scenario that has been proposed by one of my critics that suggests, well, wind and solar could buffer each other, and when the sun is not shining, the wind is blowing somewhere, and so it turns out the technology for that's not stable yet. It's only theoretical, but it's the same sort of problem as what we're sort of seeing here. And because the massive amount of infrastructure for this, the number of solar panels and the number of wind turbines, I don't think we're ever going to go this route, especially when I get to have few thorium systems we would need to do the same thing. And so we're seeing what I call a white swan, a very disruptive technologies coming in that's going to fix a lot of our problems and make things a lot simpler.
And the fact that it's white is it's very predictable.
I call it white because it's a helpful thing, whereas a black swan scares the hell out of everyone, and its true benefit's not clear.
Okay.
But as for predictability, well, it's been predicted for 50 years. This technology is literally 50 years old. I've got reports from 1972 saying it works. Let us do it, please. So, yeah. So, anyway, so let's not spend too much time on this. Right, so we went through all these scenarios. These methods was first developed in my GDK bulletin that looked at the amount of minerals that we need. And so the red here is the total amount of metal for all the wind turbines, solar panels, electric vehicles, batteries, but also storage buffer for 28 days. Now, I've calculated 28.8 days in the simulation I've just done here. So it's actually, red is a reasonable outcome. The column next to it is the reported global reserves is grey. The white is resources, estimated resources, and the black is what resources that we know of under the sea. And so what this is showing, this is just for the first generation stuff. It's not going to work. So this whole idea of the green transition is not going to work. So so we need to go back to the drawing board and think of something else. Now, most analysts get to this point and say, "So we're doomed. The sky is falling. Let's run around like headless chickens." So no, let's go back to the drawing board and make a new plan. That's what this is telling me. And for the last couple of years, I've been doing just that. What might that plan be? And the simple answer is make batteries out of something other than lithium-ion chemistry, of which we have, there's sodium batteries, there's zinc batteries, there's iron-air batteries. Now, they all require resources. And some of those resources are things like graphite. And we will need copper in large quantities. So we're going to have to readjust our society one way or another. So it will change. Anyway, so yeah, you had a question.
No, I was just affirming what you said.
Okay. So moving on. Okay, so here's scenario HG. This was the circular economy. We'll get to HH in a minute. So this is the on the chart on the right. This is what we normally do. We dig up stuff out of the ground. We turn it into stuff. We use it, throw it away, and put it in landfill. That's called the linear economy. And Hawaii, the chart on the left, is what happens in Hawaii. We catch everything. Some of it gets consumed. Some of it gets exported. Then there's waste. What is that waste? And so using metrics of a recycling plants in the UK, if we took all that waste and recycle it, what could come from it? So this is the idea of the circular economy. What is that? Well, the circular economy is we take our waste and recycle it, turn it into raw materials, and then raw materials get inserted into manufacture. And nice idea, but it's thermodynamically imbalanced, and it doesn't map the complexity of the materials that go around the loop. So we'd have to radically reinvent manufacture for this to work. So this is what I'm sort of talking about here. Is these are all the metals. Say for let's say a battery. You got different kinds of batteries. Well, you have different components, and those components are made up of all these things that come from mining. Right. And then the batteries themselves are put in things like smartphones and laptops and power tools. And so there's an enormous complexity here. And so I've made these. Let's zoom in. So I've made all these flow sheets that you start out with, say, all these different minerals in the mining end of things. And this is what we're to encourage to focus on. But then it gets to a point where it's turned into metal. And so, all right, well, what happens there? And the metal gets put into components. And then it goes through several trading platforms. And then it gets put into finished goods. And then there's distribution. And then there's the waste plume. And so this is all of this needs to be mapped. So this is what I'm attempting to do, right? So back to Hawaii. So the idea is that Hawaii, not a lot of manufacture happens. And so we're going to catch all the stuff in Hawaii and recycle it, but then we're going to put it on a ship and send it out to where it can be manufactured again. Recycling must be so effective that the products are high quality that it's economically viable, and at the moment it is not. So this is the challenge that the circular economy has. And so my plan is to simplify what we manufacture and do as much of it locally as possible.
I think many people would be shocked to find out that despite Hawaii's lush environment, a lot of their food is outsourced from elsewhere. I mean, even the fruits and vegetables.
11%. They're about 11% self-sufficient in terms of food production, because what they're doing in agriculture, they're growing a lot of cash crops like coffee. So everything is geared to economics, not self-sufficiency. So what happens? What could we do? So, well, this is the stuff that's imported. That's the stuff that's exported. Now we're going to generate a lot of waste. We're going to catch all of it, and we're going to recycle it into this. Some things can't be recycled, and so some of it goes to land. So instead of all of it going to landfill, now only a fraction goes to landfill. And so, right. So then there's some ideas I was saying before. What if we took rubber tires, put them into a pyrolysis plant powered by a thorium reactor? And Hawaii produces between 500,000 and 1 million passenger car tires a year. Well, let's take the average, 750. Take all them, and every year we could produce. Do you do gallons or liters?
We do gallons in the States.
Okay, so you got 582,957 gallons of diesel produced a year from rubber tires, and so it's not enough to replace everything, but you could run your emergency services on that, not a problem.
Mm-hmm. I mean, no, it's a significant number.
And so what you could then do is take out. This is for a population of 1.4 million people. So what we're sort of saying is you could actually sort of become a local source for energy. So the next one is, let's take human sewage, and instead of having a massive sewage plant and all the problems associated with that, capture it all, put it into a pyrolysis plant, again powered by a thorium reactor, and we could produce 2,600 tons of syngas. Now, syngas is half hydrogen, half carbon monoxide. You can either use it as cooking gas, or you can use it to recycle iron powder. And iron powder is a metal fuel that can be burned in place of coal. So what you're now doing is you're taking a health hazard off the table and you're turning it into an energy source. Now, this is one that I think you'll like. Get rid of that. All right. In the center of the Pacific Ocean, there's what's called a ocean gyre of plastic. It's the size of Texas. I don't think this is the actual one, but this is one of the gyres around the world.
A sea of plastic the size of Texas.
It's the size of Texas, the state of Texas, and it's 30 feet deep into the water.
Man.
It's huge. This is all the plastics that we dump in the ocean. There's about 7 or 8 of them around the world. And so you go, gosh, what do we do? And so there's lots of attempts to try and do something about this. And so I said, well, I put my engineering hat on. So what might one do? And so if we take an oil tanker and refit it, we put a thorium reactor on that oil tanker, and the Chinese are already doing this, right? So, and you put a pyrolysis plant and a plant to actually clean the plastic and all that, and capture any trapped wildlife and return them to the sea. Put that plastic into a pyrolysis plant, and we get fuel liquids and char solids. Take that liquid back to a land-based refinery, and Hawaii has those, and we're producing diesel fuel. So we're going to take a problem, an environmental problem, and then we're going to make diesel fuel out of it. Here's the numbers. If every day that ship pulls out 40 tons of plastic, we can produce every day 5,447 gallons of diesel every day. So now that one ship would go up and down that guy like a lawnmower, and it would clean it up in something like 6 years. So we're taking,
and then we would get energy out of it vis-a-vis diesel,
and you'd get energy out of that. So Hawaii's in the middle of nowhere. It's at the very end of a long supply chain. It's highly vulnerable to diesel shortages. What if it could make its own diesel? Now, again, this won't be enough to replace all diesel consumption for the whole society, but you could do emergency services.
Yeah. And you said China's already doing this, right?
Say again?
You said China was already doing something like this?
China is already doing thorium energy. They're already putting a thorium reactor on a container ship to power it. Right, so that they've now got a shipping fleet that's thorium molten salt powered. And the idea of putting plastics in pyrolysis is done everywhere. The problem is the plastics in the sea, you've got to, the ship fills up full of plastic, and now what? You've got to get the ship back to shore and then get the plastics from the ship up to a recycling center. And that's where this idea normally falls over. But what I've done is I've put a pyrolysis plant onto the actual ship itself. And so when you capture that plastic and turn it into fuel oil, there's a 20-fold reduction in volume. So instead of a ship full of plastic, you've now got a ship full of fuel oil, and you're processing many, many times the quantity of plastics, and you've got a saleable product.
Hey, Simon, one second.
Yeah, sure. Take that. So, okay, so there's a whole lot of ideas here. Now, what I've done here, that is I'm now comparing the infrastructure needed for Hawaii if it was to do a full circular economy. Everything's captured and recycled. We're talking about 53 plants of various sizes. That's not a lot. Now compare that to the green transition, the conventional green transition. Look at the infrastructure required here. So this is the transport fleet, 1.27 million electric vehicles. In terms of electricity generation, 28 million solar panels, 275 big wind turbines. The stationary power storage is the problem, and so this is actually where wind and solar fall over as the infrastructure needed for this. But the point of this slide is to show what we call the circular economy is orders of magnitude smaller than the green transition, but they're not the same thing. And in terms of what's done for society, the green transition is actually much more important. So this is the amount of storage that needs to go into the power grid. Now, on Hawaii, there is a 565 megawatt hour battery storage site called Kapolei Energy Storage. Right, so how many of these stations that are 185 megawatts, and that's a picture of it, do we need? And if we're to do the green transition as planned, with the regulations as they are, we need more than 3,000 of these sites. 3,000. If we were to install a single nuclear power plant, and we'd need less solar and wind, then you have this big reduction. So there's a massive reduction in infrastructure. And the purple transition doesn't need any of this. But this is the infrastructure. The power storage buffer is the Achilles heel for wind and solar at the moment. And maybe if someone will pull a rabbit out of the hat and develop an engineering solution for it, and I'm all for human innovation. What my point is, it doesn't exist at the moment, and someone should do so. All right, moving on. Okay. So this is comparing them all together. So this is, this is the power generated for each of the scenarios along the bottom here. So this is Hawaii as it was in 2019. This is the red is oil and the black is coal. So this is what they do at the moment.
Okay, and so that's the baseline.
Yeah, but this is just electricity that transport's taken care of by petroleum.
Right.
And everything to the right of that includes base load plus transport. Right, so the hatch ones are the A, B, C, D. These are the scenarios. This is ammonia. Look at this. Oh, wow.
So wait, what is the red and white stripe or yeah?
So these are scenarios HA, HB, and HD.
Ammonia.
So if we were to go like one technology only, and hydrogen, for example, you have to make the hydrogen. This is the amount of power that you need. Ammonia is a great idea, but you've got to have hydrogen first and turn it into ammonia. If we went hybrid and generated the scenario C is if we got all the biomass and we put it into combined heat and power plants, which is planned. So we're generating the same amount of electricity. The next slide is the capacity we need. The green transition is HE1, and this is the split that I think the solar will take most of it. And HE2 is the grey is if you install a single nuclear reactor, and purple is on the end here. And you might notice purple is a bit less than your conventional green transition. There's a reason for that I'll get to in a moment. So this slide is, this is power generation. So we've taken away the hatched ones. And so now we're looking at, this is what happened in 2019, and these are the others. And these are the hybrids that we're going to compare to that are sensible. So this is the two green transition, and then purple's on the end there. So the next chart over here is how much installed capacity do we know. So this is the actual infrastructure. And so the conventional green transition needs 15 gigawatts of electrical power generation. The purple transition needs 2,500.
Significantly
and
less.
The difference there is a molten salt reactor is 98% of availability, whereas solar is only 19%. So you need many more solar systems operating to reliably deliver to the grid. And so there's a much smaller footprint. Now, the point here is this. 2019 in red, that's what we did in 2019 with just power generation. Purple transition can now do not only power generation, but also transport as well with less power installed. It's a smaller system, but now we're actually doing everything. We can now shrink the human system without losing capability. The infrastructure is now smaller in footprint. We can hit the degrowth targets without, all these systems are non-fossil fuel. They all have a low materials footprint. That's the opportunity. All right, so we're running out of time, so I need to move along here. The people who are interested can read the report.
Where will this report be posted? Where's this report posted, Simon, for those who want to dig deeper?
It's public now. It's up now. It's on the GTK website. I showed you the link before up here, but I can give you the link as well.
Okay. Yeah, just give me the link and I'll post it in the description box.
So see that link there? That's
okay.
It. Yeah. So shall we look at the regenerative agriculture? Are people interested in that, or should we go straight purple?
Let's go straight to purple.
Okay, straight to purple. All right. So what are we trying to do? So we want electricity generation, transport, and we want manufacture. So the purple transition looks like this. We've got a reimagined resource balanced economy at the center of everything. So a reimagined commodity sector, liquid fuel fission, thorium molten salt reactors, chemistries other than lithium ion running our transport, combustion of iron powder to do all the high temperature stuff that replaces coal, pyrolysis of human sewage to produce syngas, which can then be used to produce hydrogen, or recycle the iron powder, or be produced in cooking gas. And we've got ammonia fuel ICE technology to run our long-range transport, for example, the international maritime industry. So here is...
So why is it called the purple? Why do you coin the term purple transition?
So we had the green transition, right? And so it was green, it was a color. And at the time, hydrogen was going through all these different colors, like you had pink hydrogen, you had blue hydrogen. And so I decided to find a color, and my wife's favorite color was purple. There you go.
Very simple beginnings.
Right, so molten salt reactors, they've been around for a while. There's a system in China that's commercially selling power now. They've got 7 or 8 systems that are actually being developed. And once they've actually got the metrics for themselves, they're going to produce several hundred of these between now and 2037. They're out the gates and running. And so we've been left behind in the West. And so there's the system there. What it is the thorium fluoride is bombarded with, it's not radioactive to handle. It's what's called fertile, but it's not radioactive. We put the salt in the reactor and we bombard it with neutrons from, say, a plug of uranium. And some of that thorium gets transmuted into uranium-233, which is radioactive inside the reactor. It's hot, it melts the salt, and the salt moves around as a liquid, and there's a heat exchange which turns water into steam and generates electricity. It's already liquid, so it can't melt down. And if it gets too hot, it cascades over the top of itself and shuts down, and you've got a freeze plug system that can remove fuel from the reactor if it does get too hot, and that can be dealt with separately. Fuel can be added while it's running, and fuel can be cleaned while it's running. So it's a very different system. This is what they look like. This is Copenhagen Atomics. That's actually it's the size of a shipping container. And I actually went out to, and here is me at the Copenhagen plant.
Ah, there you are.
So there's no, this is not the only guys who are doing it, but these are probably the most advanced in the world. So Copenhagen Atomics, they're more advanced technically than anyone else I've seen. That's one of the test rigs behind me. That's half a system. The reactor itself is in this sort of structure here, and this is the water cooling side of it. They've got the complexity of, say, a 3-bedroom kit home.
Wow.
So, and they're going to manufacture one of these a day out of that one factory. And from what I saw, there's no problem with that.
Really?
So it won't be a problem. And most of the materials in it are steel and nickel alloys. Some of them are exotic. We don't need that many of these reactors, though. They've got a 50-year working life before they get taken, and a 5-year maintenance cycle. And when they deploy,
do these reactors have to be stationed at near fault lines like the existing nuclear reactors we have worldwide, or no?
It doesn't matter. So that's the reactor right there. That generates the heat that comes out. So there's the system there. Right. So you got your reactor. Heat is coming out in this heat exchanger here at 560 degrees. And you have another system like a steam turbine about the same size sitting next to it. These things arrive on a truck. Right, so anywhere you want electricity or heat, there it is, it lands. And so then it's a question of, well, what do you want to use it for? And how do you make sure it's secure and all that? But you don't have the restrictions of a massive coal-fired power station or a gas-fired power station or a massive, like Fukushima-style conventional generation 3 plus. The opportunity here is a much simplified system. It's smaller. We still have capability, but instead of a massive transport grid, distribution grid, which is really fragile, we have a decentralized grid, and under every industrial system, we have one of these. Every hospital, every town, every whatever, every mine site will have one of these. It's small, it's decentralized, and it's an entirely different concept.
How many homes on average can something like this support?
Let's say I'm doing calculations of a small town of 10,000 people for my innovation hub that I want to build, and I've calculated for the civilian population in that and the office spaces involved, we need 6 megawatts of installed capacity. This thing does 40 megawatts. That picture there is a reactor that would deliver 40 megawatts of electricity. Right? So many towns, depending on how you sort of set this up, we're probably talking about 80, 90,000 people. Town of that size would need just that.
Nice.
Yeah, it's a fundamentally different. I did an energy return on energy invested calculation on this, and it is orders of magnitude more efficient than all other energy systems because of the nature of how this works.
Well, you said it was like 500 to 1, or was that?
So here's, are you sitting down? This again is in the Hawaii report in Appendix Theta in the back. The full calculation is there. So conventional oil is something like 20 to 1 to 12 to 1, depending on who you talk to and what's involved in the calculation.
20 units of energy per one unit used to extract.
So oil in the beginning, for every unit of energy you put in, you've got 100 back. And so it was a very good energy return. Conventional oil is now around 20 to 1, something like that. Hydro is probably our best system. That's about 40 to 1. Coal is still 80 to 1 in some circumstances, depending on the quality of the coal. 80 to 1. Conventional nuclear is something like 60 to 70 to 1, something like that, depending on the system you're looking at. Solar energy, now it depends on what you include here, and this is a subject of hot debate. Right. It's something like between 5 to 1, and it goes negative if you include the battery buffer or the power storage. Right. Well, you're putting more energy in than you get back.
Energy sink, yeah.
Well, and the people who promote solar get very aggressive about this. Anyway, the thorium molten salt system you're looking at here will have an energy return on energy invested of 2,548 to 1.
Man. It may as well be free at that point. From a practical standpoint, it may as well just be free energy.
So the Copenhagen Atomics is going to be selling power at 2 cents a kilowatt hour, whereas conventional power at the moment, at its cheapest, is about 13 cents a kilowatt hour in South America. Ho, ho, ho. Now, the other groups have since approached me and said, look, we've got a better system. I've yet to see their numbers, but they're claiming they can sell electrical power economically at 1 cent a kilowatt hour.
Mm.
It's whatever it is, it's going to be a lot different to what we're doing at the moment.
A lot cheaper too.
So, all right. So let's move on. This is another cool idea. When I actually looked at the Hawaii report and we did the mapping and everything, what I found was the amount of energy that trucks were taking a disproportionate amount of electrical power on the other side of the equation once we actually phased out fossil fuels. And so the idea was we've got to do what trucks do and move cargo around our city without using trucks. And so we've got the idea of let's go to this picture first. This is actually an example from a Nigerian mine site.
Mm.
And so
Simon, if you don't mind, just kind of let's go ahead and try and wrap this section up as fast as possible. Right. We still have to get to what China's doing too. Okay, right. I don't mean to rush you, but I know we're on a bit of a time constraint.
I understand. The answer is this: we have a monorail system that has monorails on the top to move people, and shipping containers underneath in a pod system like that, and we move that up and down a strategically significant route. That doesn't remove all trucks, it removes some trucks. Mm-hmm. And in doing that, there's less trucks and buses on the road. We still will have those things, we need them for flexibility. And so what that does is it reduces the amount of electricity needed for the grid by about 20%. So yeah, so there we see like there is the green transition. It needs what it's about 26,000 gigawatt hours, whereas the purple transition is a little over 20. So there's like a 19-20% reduction there. All right, just quickly, what does this system look like? So come back here. So what I've done here is in the center, there's the resource balanced economy in the center. This is mapped out for Hawaii. All the things around it are all balanced in terms of how would you do this and what numbers are involved. And if we were to include the circular economy, as in if we were to include what do we do with our waste streams, and if we were to recycle them, it looks something like this. So there's our society up the top. We catch all the rubbish. We've got thorium molten salt. We've got several ships. One of those ships goes out and collects plastics from the sea. We're producing stuff, and it all balances. Right, that's it. Done. So let me pull out of that. And how do I stop share? Stop share. And all right. So we're back, and so we can seal that off now, and we can move into China if you like.
Yeah, definitely. I will have the link to that slide set down in the description box below. So if you guys are interested in,
I can actually give you the slide set. That's easy.
Yep. I'll have it posted down below so people can just click on it and access it themselves. But yeah, let's move over to China. You did allude to me right before we hit record that China was doing some very interesting, very sly things, let's call it, to kind of get off the radar. Yeah, but go ahead and elaborate.
Bit of background.